welcome back to our channel. I'm Kumar Dattatreyan, joined with Chris Daly, and we are talking about we're doing a redo of SAFe Principle 6, and it wasn't our fault. You know, SAFe went and changed the principle, so we have no choice but to redo the video about Principle 6. And what is Principle 6? Well, the old Principle 6 is what it states is visualize and limit work in progress, reduce batch sizes, and manage queue lengths. All right, it's a lot of words, right, Chris? What is the new Principle 6?
The new Principle 6 is that we want to make value flow without interruptions.
Make value flow without interruptions. That's a lot easier.
Yeah, it is, and it makes sense, right? If you've got to get things flowing through before you can start optimizing. So it really makes sense, and it's simpler to understand for most people, I think.
Yeah, I agree, and I really like the guidance that SAFe has come out with in terms of the new Principle 6, make value flow without interruptions. Because really, when you boil it down to its core essence, SAFe is a flow-based system. It's you have a flow at every level in the organization, from the portfolio all the way down to the teams. And so making value flow without interruptions makes sense. And what are some of the things that strike you as useful in the changes in this principle, Chris?
I think it brings a couple things to the front that weren't so obvious before. And that specifically, there was a number 8, one of the 8 accelerators, flow accelerators. Number 8 is one where it says to go in and reduce the legacy, to get to it, remediate legacy policies and practices, which, you know, in my experience, that tends to be the biggest thing that we get. You know, you come in and we're going to start out with an agile team. We're going to start a release train. We'll start moving forward. And yet we still have all this crap that hangs around from the way we did things for the last 150 years. And a lot of it doesn't apply. We're just doing it because we don't know any different. We don't know any other way. It's just kind of the way we do things. And those policies and practices really get in the way. And it explicitly calls that out and says, you know, that we need to address that. We need to get rid of those.
Yeah, it's a really good one. It's one of the 8 flow accelerators. We're probably not going to go through all 8 of them, except maybe to list them. The one that really resonates with me, besides the one that you mentioned, is number 3, minimize handoffs and dependencies. Right? I mean, it doesn't call it out in the old Principle 6. It's just really very sort of data-focused, visualize, limit, whip, reduce batch sizes, and so on. And of course, if you do those things, visualize, limit, whip, reduce batch sizes, manage queue lengths, you probably address some of these other things that are specified in the new Principle 6, like managing handoffs and dependencies, and addressing and remediating legacy policies and procedures. But because it's not called out, those things may tend to get overlooked, right? So I kind of like the way that the new Principle 6 is laid out with all of these 8 flow accelerators, one of them being the minimizing the handoffs and dependencies. And go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt you, but like the minimizing handoffs and dependencies, when I read that and read that part of the principle, it sounded like to me it was very much geared toward moving away from component-driven teams to more functional teams.
Right.
Was that your understanding as well?
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, there's always been the goal, right, with an agile, a move to agile methods, agile transformation, is that you move to teams that are cross-functional, that are largely independent. They can do their work without having to rely on other teams. In practice, it doesn't work as cleanly as that. And so this flow accelerator to minimize the handoffs and dependencies really sort of calls it out. And I think you're right. This makes it very clear and very apparent that, hey, you know, these things all go together to improving flow. And, you know, while you need to visualize the limit, whip, and reduce batch sizes and manage queue lengths, those things by themselves may not give you the results you want, especially if legacy policies and procedures exist that impede the flow or you have teams that are malformed or lots of dependencies around. Those things will not help you improve flow.
Yeah, I've worked with teams where it will take 8 or 9 different teams to get a feature ready and out the door. And that, those handoffs just take time, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you've got, it's, kind of like the car going down the highway, right? And if there's no buffer space, you have no room. And that's what happens a lot in organizations is we've got so many handoffs and so many dependencies and what have you that we get stopped by somebody else. And then we go off and do something. And then when we come back, when they're done, maybe we're ready to come back, maybe we're not. And it just introduces a lot of lag time into the process of delivering that value, which can just make it unbearable for the business.
Yeah, absolutely. And it definitely impedes flow. When you talk about, maximizing flow to your customers, having all these handoffs and dependencies, it actually causes a lot of other problems downstream and upstream, right? Because teams have to sort of interrupt what they're doing to deal with some dependency that they're being asked to fulfill. And so there's no continuity of work. They can't just sort of limit the work that they have to do. They have to add more work because, oh my God, this team needs this and they need it right away. So we got to interrupt what we're doing and get it to them. So yeah, I think this is a really good one. Another one that really I find interesting is this flow accelerator that they call get faster feedback. It seems so simple. Right. What is that? How do you see that playing out, Chris?
Well, we spend a lot of time doing work and planning and anticipating what we're going to do. And, if we're just honest with ourselves, we're wrong most of the time, right? We don't have all the knowledge. And so getting that feedback quick so we don't go too far, we don't waste our time, or we don't do something that doesn't make sense. It's important to do that. And sometimes that feedback could be, if a team, going back to what I was talking about earlier about it, you've got 8 or 9 teams, team one may not get any feedback from production for 6 months to a year on whether their part worked or not. And so trying to get it sooner is just imperative to reducing waste.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Faster feedback is sort of one of the tenets of agility, right? I mean, which is why, in Scrum, you have 1 to 4 week sprints, and the guidance is towards shorter sprints, because what that does is it forces the teams to get feedback every sprint cycle. Again, the shorter the sprint, the more frequent the feedback is. And with a Kanban team, with a flow-based team, you may be getting feedback every day or multiple times a day, right? Because it's really based on the flow time, the cycle time for one item in the backlog. And I know I'm getting a little bit too technical, but the idea is that you want to get feedback as quickly as possible so you can make adjustments and learn from what the feedback is. Right? And ideally, that feedback is coming directly from your customers. Well, what else pops out? We're ending up going through most of these accelerators. We'll maybe do one more. What else pops out to you?
I think optimized time in the zone is important, right? I mean, as people, we tend to be multitasking, and we tend to, we'll tend to do, I have music on while I'm doing work. Some people work with the TV on, those kind of things. We tend to get, distracted with where we're at, and we tend to not get enough focus time. And I think that's important for folks that are engaged in agile transformations, in agile in general, right? Is to get that focus time so that they can do what they need to do, take it from start to finish, and then move on, right? Get it done and go on to the next thing, as opposed to work on it for a little bit of time and then go over here and what have you, right? It's just, to me, that's the number one. That's another thing that I encounter all the time is when you go into an organization and you try to schedule a meeting, it's like their calendars are full.
Yeah.
And it's like developers, and it's like, what the hell? And when you start looking at it, it's why do you have all these meetings? And how are you supposed to get any work done? Well, I got to be in all these meetings. Well, because they say so. And you want to optimize that time in the zone. You want those people that actually do the work, not just the developers, but everybody that does work, to actually have some time to concentrate on what they need to do and get the stuff done. And it'll be better quality, it'll be faster, and you'll be happier, and they'll be happier.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like that. I mean, the time in the zone. And I wonder if people did some analysis of their team's time in the zone, meaning when they were uninterrupted and could actually focus on their work, what they would come out with. And it's not just the people, the developers and people on the development teams. And it really doesn't matter what you're developing, whether it's software or marketing plans or legal briefs or whatever. It's the Scrum team could be doing any of those things. What's more important is how much uninterrupted time they have. And if people sort of took stock of their own schedules, maybe you're a leader or a manager or project manager or product owner, whatever your role is, and you looked through your day and you saw, well, how much sort of zone time do I actually have? And I would be willing to bet that it's probably not that much, because you're in meetings all the time. And so, taking stock of that and then looking for ways do you really have to be in all these meetings? What can you do to get the information you need without having to go attend the meeting, which you're probably not paying attention to anyway. So I think this is a good one too, to improve flow. Anything else? The other four, do you want to? The other four are really covered in the last video we did, which are still flow accelerators, but I don't know that we need to talk about them.
The thing I would add is that I think is very interesting is by putting these in the principles, right? Every class in the SAFe framework goes through, every time you go through the principles, right? It doesn't matter if you're a certified RTE and you go to an LPM class, they're going to go and they're going to talk, certified LPM, they're going to talk a little bit about SAFe. They assume that you haven't had SAFe. And what's interesting about incorporating these in the principles is that when you have those classes, whether it's leading SAFe or you're doing an executive training session or LPM or whatever, you're talking about those. So I think it's interesting. It's a kind of a nice way to segue those in, to get them in at least so the leaders, the people that are making a lot of the decisions, understand what you're trying to do, right? Above and beyond just whip, because you're getting into a few more things here that are a little bit more cultural that you need to address, right? You can have whip, and we can focus on whip and reduce it down to, hey, just work on two things, and we can typically do that at the team level. But to be able to do some of the other things, the other principles, it really requires a culture that is one that embraces these principles. And so I was curious what you thought about that.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think principles, values, whatever you want to call them, need to be at the forefront of people's minds. Forget training, although training is important to bring it up in every class and to see how the principles are manifested in the training that's being provided. So if it's LPM, so for portfolio managers and portfolio owners, how do they apply these principles, these values, right? Differently, right, maybe, or the same as an RTE would, as he or she is coaching the art. But I also think it's important for people to have it top of mind, for a company that's moving through using SAFe as part of their digital transformation, or their transformation in general. I think people learn about these principles in class and then they forget about them, right? But it's important, I think, for people to take all these principles and maybe even to restate them in their own words and how they would apply it and use it, and have it somewhere visible so that they can see it. Because too often these principles, they sort of lose their meaning right after training's done, right?
That might be a nice workshop to do, right? Would be just to go through and say, all right, we're going to take the 10 principles and we're going to go through and we're going to talk about each one. And then we're going to give you 5 minutes to sit down and write about how you're going to apply that principle when you leave this workshop, right?
Yeah.
That might be a great way of reinforcing it. When I was thinking about training, I was thinking about repetitiveness, right? So
Yeah.
you go through, typically you go through leading safe, you might go to a Scrum Master class, you might get into an LPM class, right? Because that training people tend to move up, they tend to keep getting trained. And I was thinking about the repetitiveness of the principles when you were talking, right?
Yeah.
About how important that is.
I think that is very important. You know what they say about the human brain, right? You have to listen to something, see it 7 times before it becomes maybe not ingrained, but at least before you recognize that it's something that maybe you've seen before, that you need to do need to do something about, right? And so I think you're right there. Definitely seeing it over and over again is important from a training context. And I love the idea of a workshop. In fact, when I do Scaled Agile training, I do spend more time on the principles, both the Agile manifesto values and principles and the SAFE principles, just because I think they're so key and important to. It's really about the people, right? It's easy to say, let's install this framework and we're going to be agile, but the reality is it's about the people and the changes that these ways of working are going to the impact that these ways of working are going to have on not only the people that are going through the training, but all the people that they work with or they lead or they report to. And so it's really important to spend the time to get comfortable with the values and the principles and get these people to understand how to apply it, how to manifest it. So I think you're right.
Is that the cliche, doing agile versus being agile?
Yeah, I don't really like that because it makes it like agile is this end state, be all end state that you have to be agile, or if you're not, then you're not doing it right. I don't like it for that reason, but I do think that there's some truth to that, right? So it's really adopting the values, the mindset in your own words, in your own way, and being able to apply it.
Yeah, that's what I meant, was being not necessarily, getting to utopia, but just embracing the values and principles. And if you do that, then the practices and tools you use become irrelevant because you're doing things in a way that you need to do them.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Well, anything else to add on this principle number 6, the redo of principle number 6?
No, not right now. I'm sure as soon as we stop recording, I'm going to think of something.
Yeah, I will say that the guidance on the Scaled Agile Framework is really good. So we'll leave you some links below, taking you to the main article. And from there's several other articles linked that are all related to the flow-based guidance that SAFE has published. And so it talks about flow-based guidance at the team level, at the art level, the Agile release train level, at the portfolio level, at the value stream level, and all these things are interrelated. And so this principle really, it's quite an important one. So whether you're doing SAFE or not, flow-based approaches are really important to understand how value flows through an organization and all the things that prevent it from flowing smoothly. And so I think this is good guidance to read regardless.
Yeah. Good.
All right. Anything to add before we go?
No. Thank you for in setting this up, and we had a good conversation before we actually started rolling. So
yep, absolutely. All right. Thanks all for watching, and stay tuned for our next video in the SAFE series, where we are done now with the principles. We're going to be focusing on some of the practices, some of the challenges, some of the roles, and so on and so forth. So come back, subscribe to our channel. There'll be more good stuff here. Bye-bye.
See you, everybody.